everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diverse Goddess. It's Hannah, and in today's video, I'm going to be starting my first day of my 14-day video series on astrology, and today we're going to be starting with the elements, so keep watching. So before we jump into today's elements regarding astrology, I first wanted to share why I'm even doing this series, and it's because I have been studying astrology since I was pretty much in junior high is when I first stumbled upon it, and I kind of studied it or learned about it kind of in private because I might have mentioned in some of my other videos, like I didn't really have a lot of people around me that were very spiritual or into spiritual type of things, but I always found it very fascinating, and I've always kept kind of like journals and stuff, and as you can see from this one, it's very, very old, and I have many of these, and I even drew my own astrology wheel. But because I found a lot of truth in astrology, I wanted to share it with you guys. And one of the reasons why I find a lot of truth in astrology is because, yes, I've done a lot of education or studying on my own regarding it, but I've also have my own intuition around it as well, because if I spend enough time with someone, I can usually figure out what sign they are. And even an example, there was once where I almost guessed somebody's birth date almost to the day. It was back in the day when a friend of mine, I was looking at their art. They happened to be a photographer, and I was looking at their photography that was, you know, very artful and creative. And just by their artwork alone, I was able to pretty much guess almost their birthday to a T. And I asked them if their birthday was between September 20th and 23rd. And they said their birthday was September 22nd. So that is like very damn close. And that was just me observing my friend's artwork and what I gathered from their creativity. And so if I can do that just from my own intuition, and I mean, can I do that all the time? No, but what I am saying is that I do find a lot of truth to it, because I don't feel I could do that if there wasn't some elements of truth there. And I know there's a lot of people that don't necessarily believe in astrology and feel that it's too generic and not very real. But we have been using astrology or astronomy or even the constellations and looking to the stars throughout history to give us information. And so it's no different that we can also get from the stars information into the human psyche and into our personality as well. And a lot of people who feel that astrology is very general and not very personal is usually because their experience with astrology is usually just reading a horoscope out of a newspaper or a magazine that's only like 2 or 3 sentences long. And if that's your experience with astrology, then yes, it's very basic and very general. But when you're dealing with the totality of astrology and really dive into it, there's a lot more that goes into it, because you will usually do an astrological chart on an individual person, which will include more than just their sun sign. It will include a moon sign, a rising sign, and many other little details. And so it can get very personal. It can act like a blueprint into a person's psyche and personality. And it can act as like a fingerprint, and everyone's going to be different. That's why you have to do a chart, so you can kind of get into the details of everything, and it becomes unique in that sense. But in my 14-day series on astrology, I'm only going to be dealing with the sun signs. And before I dive into each individual sign, I am first going to start this series off by going over the astrological elements, because even though there are 12 signs that most people are familiar with, each sign falls under a certain element, and there are 4 elements. And those 4 elements are fire, earth, air, and water. And even though you should watch this whole video so you can learn about all the elements, I'm going to put timestamps below, so if you want to cut to a certain element right away or learn about a certain element first, you'll be able to do that, and I will leave that in the comment section below. And one other thing I wanted to share before we jump into the elements is that the way that I look at astrology, and again why I find a lot of truth to it, is because I look at it as much like nature. And much like nature, like say you have a field full of roses, You know that they are roses because of their characteristics. There are certain characteristics that roses have that, say, a daisy doesn't have. Like a rose is always going to have thorns. That's just how nature made it. And a daisy is not going to have thorns and is not going to have any of the characteristics of a rose. But does that mean just because you have a field full of roses that they're all going to be the same? No, there are things about each rose that are going to have things that make it unique and individualized. However, they do share common traits. And you know when you see a rose right away, again, because of its characteristics. And the same can be said for the elements that I'm about to talk about. And so all the signs that fall under a particular element or share a certain element are also going to share certain characteristics. So the first element we're going to start with is fire. So if your sun sign is either in Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius, then you fall under the element of fire. Now for me, the fire element represents the pure spirit of who we are as a human being. It represents the heart center. Its shape is also represented by a triangle, and it's also a masculine element. A lot of fire people have very passionate personalities, and they're very much driven by instinct, meaning that they're more apt to act than to just sit around thinking, because they are an action-oriented element. Fire is about action. And so if they get inspired by something or an idea, they're already figuring out a way to make it happen. Fire people will also tend to usually be social butterflies because they have a gift of connecting with people easily and quickly, and they have a gift of gab. And where a lot of people might be shy, a lot of fire people aren't shy, and they're usually the first ones to kind of introduce themselves first. Sometimes fire people can get ahead of themselves and they can get very excited about a project or an idea, and then sometimes because they kind of act without thinking, they can kind of fall on their ass. But that never stops them because they kind of just dust themselves off, and they're kind of almost childlike in their pursuits, in a sense of they can kind of pick themselves off quickly, dust themselves off, and kind of continue like nothing happened. They can also be considered very hot-headed and get angry easy, but even their anger is short-lived and they move on quickly. And fire people can range from being like a campfire where they want everybody to sit around them, have great conversations, and have a good time while keeping the atmosphere warm. Or they can be like a freaking forest fire, burning everything to the ground. And like real fire, you notice fire. Fire has a way of grabbing your attention even if it's nearby somewhere. You can't miss fire. And a lot of fire people enjoy and even like being the center of attention. And a lot of times they are. And like the campfire analogy, where everyone is indeed centered around them. And fire people are usually always the most adventurous, and also they love being spontaneous. And even though they have a very independent personality, they actually thrive the most and grow the most when they are in companionship. Because even though they can go through life by themselves just fine, they would rather share their adventures and anything that they try new and the experiences that they have in life. They would rather share them with someone. And like I said before, fire is an action-oriented element, and fire people tend to have a lot of energy to burn. So being active for them is like a no-brainer. So they'll usually be engaged in some like sport or outdoorsy type of activity usually. And also fire people have a very soft heart, but they have a very strong personality around it because they are a masculine element, and so they can tend to come off kind of aggressive to people. But the more they trust you and the more they let you in, fire people become softer as you get to know them more. They can also be very bold and very direct, and a lot of times some people might feel that they have a very sharp tongue, but they are just extremely honest and they tell you exactly how they feel and think. What fire people crave more than anything is to live a life of passion and purpose. And these people also bring a lot of positivity to others because they have a positive outlook on life, and they can also be very supportive and encouraging. So those are just some of the personality traits of fire. So now moving on to the earth element. If you were born a Taurus, Virgo, or a Capricorn, then you are an earth element. And earth is represented by the whole physical body, and its shape is a square. And earth is also a feminine element. Now, earth people are very grounded and practical, and they pay attention to details. And they're also very calculating. They do not make fast decisions, unlike their fellow fire signs. And they will sit around and think about things and plan things accordingly. And these people are very much about the physical world. So they enjoy incorporating all of their five senses as much as possible. So they enjoy feeling and touching and smelling and seeing and hearing everything physical. It's how they relate to the world, and they very much understand the physical world. These people are very solid, and they also seek stability in their life, and they like feeling like both feet are firmly on the ground, and so they don't want to feel shaky. And if you're somebody that they care about in their life, they will also provide you stability. Earth people are also extremely loyal, and they believe in sticking through something through thick and thin, so they are also extremely reliable. Earth people are also very organized, and they will have a lot of systems for doing things and planning things. And earth people are also the most logical, but that doesn't mean that they can't be conceptual or be considered deep. It's just that they run on logic. And if you can explain kind of out of the box ways of thinking in a more logical way, they will actually be extremely delighted and receptive to it, because now when you can explain something in a logical way, it all of a sudden becomes tangible to them and they can touch it, because again, they're about the physical world. And so they have to be able to feel and see and touch it in order for them to understand it. Earth people are also the most resistant to change because they don't like changes, because again, for them, they're all about foundation and stability. And so changes feels like an uprooting to that foundation. It would be as if like you uprooted a tree and replanted it somewhere else, or just uprooted it in general. They either feel like their whole foundation is lost, or they have to start a whole new foundation, and all that work has to be redone, which can be very stressful for them. They are also very much slow and steady movers and workers, because much like a seed that gets planted, it'll grow, but in its own way, in its own time, and it will do it in a very slow and steady way. And you cannot rush these people, because they understand that slow and steady is what builds strong roots and a strong foundation for a prosperous future. And that is very much what they intend to have. And they don't care how long it will take, because they know they will get there. And these people have the gift of patience, because from the seed will eventually come the fruits. And that is what they understand. And they know that they'll eventually be rewarded with the fruits of their labor. And if you're somebody that they care about and that they love, they are more than willing to share that with you and want to share that with you if you're willing to wait and not rush. And these people also very much love comfort and being surrounded by beauty and pleasant things. Because if you look at Mother Nature and the earth around you, it surrounds you with comfort and it surrounds you with beauty. And that's exactly what these people will do if you have an earth person in your life. They will surround you with comfort, and they will surround you with pleasant things. And because earth people are a feminine element, they're actually way more sensitive, and they feel way more than they let on. But sometimes, because their minds are so logical, they also want to deal with their feelings in a very logical way. So moving on to the next element, which is the air element. So if you were born a Gemini, Libra, or an Aquarius, then you are an air element. And air represents the intellectual side of humanity. They are the information bringers. Their shape is also that of a lightning bolt or a zigzag. And it's a masculine element, and it also represents our life force, aka the breath. Now, air people are very much fueled by the mind. Again, they are the intellectuals, and they're also the information gatherers, and they're also the ones to bring new information and communicate that with others. And they're able to see what others can't see, because if you think about it, air is something that you can't see, but it exists. And so they're the ones that bring new ideas and new information to the masses that people sometimes missed. They are also very much free thinkers and also freedom fighters, because again, if you look at air, you can't really pin air down or capture air or hold it in your hand. And so they have such a need for freedom. They will fight for it for other people, and they also give freedom to other people because they also understanding and letting things be and letting people live, and that's kind of their motto. And so they're very big and they're very accepting of a lot of things that other people might not be. They are also very creative, and because they are the communicators, they will oftentimes communicate or express themselves through creative outlets. And oftentimes their temperaments are very much calm, cool, and collected, but they can range from a cool summer breeze to a terrible windy hurricane. Air people are often the researchers, and they're into the new and unusual. And some people might think that they're a bit of an airhead, but that's because sometimes they can think so much out of the box that people find it very hard to understand them. And because they have such an open mind to everything, pretty much they can talk about a range of topics, and usually they'll be into the paranormal or psychology or even aliens, and they'll be happy to talk about any of it, or at least even listen to you talk about it, because again, they believe in being open-minded even if they don't necessarily believe in things or agree with them, because it's all about accumulating knowledge. They tend to be very investigative and always trying to find out why people do certain things, because again, they are the communicators, and so they're always trying to find solutions to problems amongst humanity to figure out how we can balance things out better, how we can communicate better, and how we can solve problems from chaotic situations. So these people can also be considered very thoughtful because, again, they're very much thinkers. And so they think about the people that they care about or people in their life more than they let on. And they also can be thinking about 500 other things at the same time, because they have the ability to be able to communicate with somebody and engage with them, but at the same time, they may be planning dinner in the back of their head. And because they're able to see what others can't always see, that is actually their gift that they bring people, is that they can bring them clarity and insight to where others may struggle. So moving on to the last element, which is water. So if you were born under the sign of Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, then you are a water element. And water represents the sensitivities of life, or the emotional side of humans, and its shape is that of a circle. And it's also a feminine element, and it represents the soul of who we are as humans. Water people also represent the mysteries of life, and so they can be very mysterious. And like an ocean or a large body of water, there's so much beneath the surface that remains mysterious. And like the ocean, water people can be extremely deep, having a lot of depth to their personality because they do hold a lot within themselves. Or they can become like shallow waters if they live on the surface side of life. And they are a very powerful element. They can range from being as soft as silk or becoming as rough as a stormy sea, drowning you in their emotional turmoil. And water people are also a reflective element, meaning they reflect back to humanity what has been given to them. And just like it matters how you treat everybody, but water people are unique in this way because they truly reflect back to humanity the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what water people wish for and hope to reflect back more than anything is gentleness, softness, love, and depth. They're also an emotional element, so they can range from laughing and crying and becoming moody all within a span of 1 hour. And they can become soft like water or hard like ice, and oftentimes if they become icy, it's out of protection because that's their way of trying to control their emotional natures. Water people also nurture and nourish the people around them because water in essence is very pure and it has cleaning powers or healing powers. And so like I said, it matters how you treat anybody, but especially with water people, because when water becomes polluted, it loses a lot of its healing properties. Water can truly suffer when it becomes polluted, and that's a lot like water people. And so the more gentle and the more loving and the more care you can give to a water person, the more you'll actually be rewarded with pure magic, because water people tend to be very magical. And water people will tend to have more of a bent toward the metaphysical or spiritual side of life. And they're also the ones who will probably talk more about spirits and dimension and otherworldly things. Because if you think about it, if you go into the water, it is like another world in itself. And that's what water people bring to people. They show people and they bring them and they show them another side to life that most people didn't even realize was there. And these people are highly sensitive, but if they channel their sensitivity in the right direction, they have tremendous intuition, often feeling what other people miss. And it's because their feelings are their direct connection to the spiritual realm. And they do not run on logic or intellect, but pure intuition. And they are also very creative, but again, their creativity will oftentimes have an otherworldly bent to it. It's almost as if water people can see directly into the other side or the other realm, because it's almost as if water is a direct doorway into that spiritual realm that others miss. And so that wraps up today's video on all 4 elements, and I hope this video was helpful and also fun. And don't forget to stay tuned, because we're going to continue this series for the next 13 days. So don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and you can also find me on Instagram at Hannah Rokes. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!